Hansel and Gretel. Long ago, in a dense, whispering forest far from any kingdom, lived a woodcutter and his two children, Hansel and Gretel. They were not royalty. They had no riches. Their home was a small wooden cabin, their meals simple broth and bread, and their days spent gathering firewood and berries. But their father loved them dearly, and their laughter filled the cottage even in the harshest winters. Unfortunately, their stepmother did not share the same warmth. She had come into their lives only a year before, and ever since, things had grown colder. Bread became scarcer. Her temper grew sharper. And her eyes always seemed to calculate the value of everything, including children. One night, when the fire burned low and the wind howled outside, the stepmother whispered to the woodcutter, "There isn't enough food. 2 extra mouths are too many." The woodcutter's eyes widened. "You don't mean?" She silenced him with a look. "In the morning, we will take them deep into the woods. And leave them." He wept quietly as he nodded. But what they didn't know was that Gretel, quiet, clever Gretel, was awake and had heard everything. Gretel waited until the house fell into silence. She reached across the bed to wake Hansel. "Wake up," she whispered. "They're planning to leave us in the forest tomorrow." Hansel's eyes opened slowly. At first, he didn't understand. But when Gretel repeated their stepmother's words, his face hardened, not with fear, but with resolve. "We won't let it happen," he said. "I have a plan." He rose from their straw mattress and crept outside. The moon was full, its silver light blanketing the yard. Hansel filled his pockets with smooth white pebbles, carefully selecting the brightest ones from beside the well. "Why pebbles?" Gretel asked when he returned. "We'll drop them as we walk. A trail. So we can find our way back." The stepmother woke them early. She wore a false smile, offering each child a small crust of bread. "We're going to help your father collect wood," she said, placing a heavy basket into Gretel's hands. "It will be a lovely day in the forest." Hansel and Gretel didn't argue. As they walked into the trees, Hansel reached into his pocket and let one pebble fall, then another, and another. The deeper they went, the thicker the trees became. Sunlight barely touched the mossy ground. Birdsong grew faint. At last, the stepmother announced, "Wait here, children. Your father and I must fetch something from deeper in the forest." Gretel clutched Hansel's arm. "She's lying." "I know," he whispered. The parents disappeared. Hours passed. The forest grew dark and cold. Shadows crept along the tree trunks, and strange rustling sounds echoed in the underbrush. Gretel began to cry. Hansel took her hand. "Look." He pointed to the pebbles, glowing faintly in the moonlight like fallen stars. "Follow them. They'll lead us home." Step by step, pebble by pebble, the children retraced their path. It took all night, but by dawn, the trees began to thin. And soon, the little cottage appeared between the trees. Their father opened the door and gasped in disbelief. "You came back." He fell to his knees and held them tightly. But the stepmother stood behind him, her lips tight, her eyes cold. She was already planning a second trip. Days passed in uneasy silence. The stepmother barely spoke to the children. She rationed their food more strictly than before, half a slice of bread each, and no second helpings. The woodcutter tried to smile, tried to speak kindly, but even his voice seemed thinner. Gretel knew something was wrong. And one evening, as clouds gathered above the forest, she overheard them again. "It didn't work," the stepmother hissed. This time we go deeper. Farther than before. No trail will bring them back. But they're just children, the woodcutter began. They're a burden. And if you won't do it, I will. Again, Gretel woke Hansel. But this time, when he slipped outside to gather pebbles, he found the door barred. The stepmother had locked them in. She knew, Hansel said grimly. She expected us to try again. Gretel sat quietly. Then we'll use what we have. In the morning, she broke her bread into tiny crumbs, wrapping them in cloth. As they were led into the woods once more, deeper, darker than before, Hansel dropped the crumbs bit by bit, just as he had done with the pebbles. The trees here were twisted and silent. No bird song. No breeze. Even the sun felt weaker, as if afraid to enter this part of the forest. At last, the parents stopped. We'll return soon, the stepmother lied again. But this time, the children didn't wait hours to begin their journey home. They turned around almost immediately, following the trail of crumbs. Only there were no crumbs. Hansel searched the roots and moss. He bent low, brushing leaves aside. They're gone, he whispered. Gretel's eyes filled with tears. And then they heard it, a caw. High in the trees, black crows sat watching them. More than a dozen. Gretel clutched Hansel's hand. They ate them. All the crumbs. Hansel's shoulders fell. They were well and truly lost now. That night, rain fell hard. The children took shelter beneath the thick roots of an ancient oak. Cold seeped into their bones. Their last piece of bread had long since been eaten. Morning came slowly, gray and wet. They wandered. 4 hours. Days, perhaps. Trees looked the same. Every direction led deeper into wild, winding woods. Berries were rare. Streams were muddy. Their stomachs twisted with hunger. Hansel tried to stay strong for Gretel. He told stories of feasts and warm fires. Of their real mother, who had once sung lullabies while making honey cakes. Gretel listened with closed eyes. Until a smell drifted on the breeze. Sweetness. Sugar. Warm spice. They opened their eyes. And through the trees, they saw it. A cottage. Made of gingerbread and spun sugar. With windows of crystallized caramel. And smoke rising from a chimney made of chocolate bricks. Hansel and Gretel stood frozen at the edge of the clearing. The house before them shimmered like a dream, walls made of gingerbread bricks, roof tiles of sugar-crusted biscuits, and fences lined with peppermint sticks. Jelly beans paved the path, and the windows glowed warm behind panes of molten sugar glass. Their stomachs growled in unison. "Do you think it's real?" Gretel whispered. Hansel didn't answer. He stepped forward, broke a small piece of cookie from the corner of the house, and bit it. His eyes widened. "It's real." The children didn't wait. They tore into the house like wolves, nibbling frosting windowsills, gnawing toffee doorknobs, and licking trails of icing from the walls. Laughter bubbled up between bites, their hunger momentarily forgotten. Just as Gretel reached for a strand of licorice twirled around a candy cane post, the door creaked open. An old woman stood in the doorway. Her skin was the color of parchment, wrinkled and spotted. Her eyes were milky but alert. She wore a patchwork shawl and smelled faintly of anise and cinnamon. "Oh, my poor sweet dears," she said in a voice that fluttered like moth wings. Come in, come in." No child should be left to starve. Hansel hesitated. Gretel looked at her brother. She seems kind. The woman smiled wide, too wide, and stepped aside. Rest. Eat. I have warm beds and warm broth. Inside, the house was even more magical. The walls were lined with books bound in marzipan, the shelves with glass jars full of candied fruits, and the rug smelled like cinnamon toast. A bubbling cauldron of vanilla stew simmered over a fire of toffee logs. She gave them each a bowl and stroked Gretel's hair. "You're safe now," she said. "You'll never be hungry again." Hansel and Gretel slept deeply that night in beds of soft caramel sheets and cloud-like pillows. But when Gretel stirred in the middle of the night, something didn't feel right. She sat up. The house was silent. But down the hallway, behind a slightly open door, candlelight flickered, and the shadow of the old woman loomed long and crooked across the wall. She was muttering. Gretel tiptoed forward and peeked inside. The woman stood before a hidden room, lit by a fire not from logs, but from something glowing green. Behind her, hanging from the walls, were bones. Small ones. The size of children's arms and legs. And on the table before her was a large iron recipe book. She flipped a page and whispered. "Fat or lean, sweet or sour. Bake them well, at just the hour." Gretel gasped, too loud. The old woman turned. Her eyes were no longer kind. They were black and gleaming, like insects. "You've seen too much, little mouse," she hissed. And from her hands shot ropes of licorice, wrapping Gretel in sticky strands. Gretel struggled against the black licorice ropes, sticky and strong. The old woman dragged her into the kitchen, her strength shocking for someone so frail. Hansel awoke to Gretel's screams. He leapt from bed, but before he could run, the crone appeared in the doorway, smiling with cruel delight. "Oh no, no, my pretty," she cooed. "You'll be coming with me." The candy house was a trap. The woman, a witch, had built it for years, feeding the forest's magic into its walls. Her home lured starving children like moths to honey. Once inside, she would fatten them up, trap them, and then into the oven, she whispered to Hansel, locking him in a cage of hardened jawbreaker bars. "Let's plump you up first." Hansel's cage stood just beside the oven, massive, iron, and decorated with cruel candy ornaments. He shouted, "Gretel! Are you okay?" From across the room, tied with sour rope to a gingerbread pillar, Gretel called back, "I'm all right. Just thinking. Thinking fast." Each morning, the witch would pull Hansel's finger through the bars to feel if he had gained weight. But Hansel, clever as ever, found a bone from an old victim and used it in place of his finger. "Still thin," the witch hissed each time. "Why won't you fatten up?" She fed him sweets and sugar stew every day. Meanwhile, Gretel was forced to sweep, cook, and clean, watching, waiting. She observed the keys. The oven. The witch's blind spots. She memorized the creaks in the floor and counted the seconds it took for the witch to shuffle from stove to cage. She was planning. On the 10th morning, the witch lost patience. "Enough," she bellowed. "Fat or thin, I'll eat him today." She grabbed a large wooden peel and began stoking the oven with cinnamon logs. Flames danced within. "Girl," she barked. "Check the fire. Make sure it's hot enough." Gretel's eyes met Hansel's. He shook his head. "No. No, I don't know how," Gretel replied, stepping carefully. "Foolish child. Like this." The witch bent toward the oven, her face near the heat. In that instant, Gretel sprang forward. The forest greeted them with silence. No birds. No wind. Just towering trees and their endless shadows. Hansel and Gretel stood at the edge of the candy ruin, staring into the deep woods. "We're free," Hansel whispered. But Gretel narrowed her eyes. Not yet. The path that wasn't there before. The children turned away from the ruined cottage, holding hands tightly. Their clothes were torn, faces smudged with ash, but there was fire in their eyes now. They walked. And walked. But the woods did not end. Night fell, and with it came a strange glow, a faint trail of moss and mushrooms glowing faintly along the ground. "Do you see that?" Hansel asked. Gretel nodded. "It's like the forest is showing us the way." With nowhere else to go, they followed it. As they walked, the trees began to whisper. Not with words, but with memories. They passed trees that held carvings of initials, H+G, written in the bark by them long ago. They passed a clearing with 2 tiny stumps where they once sat as toddlers. They passed a broken cartwheel, remains of a journey their family once made together. "The forest remembers us," Gretel whispered. It wasn't cruel now. It wasn't trying to trap them. It was guiding them home. After 2 days of walking, the trees began to thin. Light shone through more freely. Birds returned. The air smelled like spring. And then, the clearing opened. The cottage stood ahead. Their father sat outside, pale and worn, carving wood with trembling hands. He looked up. For a second, he didn't believe it. But then he dropped the carving, stumbling forward, tears pouring down his face. My children, my children." He held them close, sobbing. "I thought I had lost you forever. I never forgave myself." They clung to him tightly. Gretel asked, "Where's she?" "The stepmother?" "Gone." She had vanished into the forest weeks before, some say driven mad by guilt. Others say the forest took her. As they told their father the whole tale of the witch, the house, the cage, Hansel pulled something from his pocket. A handful of gems. The witch's home, it turned out, had not just been made of candy. Beneath the floor, Gretel had discovered a chest of jewels and gold, things taken from other children, now returned to the world through them. With these, the family never went hungry again. They rebuilt their home. They planted trees. And they left a lantern burning at the forest's edge every night, for any other child who might lose their way. The forest never forgot Hansel and Gretel. Some say its paths became a little kinder after they returned. And deep within, where the candy house once stood, nothing grows now, only a patch of blackened earth and one small candy cane, twisted and broken. A reminder that not all sweetness is safe. And not all children are helpless.